Yo, dudettes, what's going on with y'all? This week I decided to review We'll Save the Galaxy for Food. I chose this specifically because it is the work of a YouTuber who loves to tear things apart, and I often agree with them and enjoy doing so. So now I'm going to go through their work and see if we can hold them accountable. If you're worried that I'm going to be biased, yes, I am. I'm going to try and be critical against this because I'm an asshole. Beware, because spoilers be lurking ahead. So we open up listening to what I later figured out is a father pontificating over a planet he apparently helped liberate. He talks about how their local fighters overthrew a group of cyborg opponents, and this is a long-standing problem in sci-fi, because we're dealing with planets and tech that is so far beyond our own knowledge that I am instantly lost and wondering if I'm supposed to give a fuck about what's being talked about. Apparently, the answer is no, because halfway through this description even the sun shouts out about how this is boring. Points, book. Points. But I remember thinking that if the whole novel was like this, it would be really boring. Anyhow, we're listening in on a family arguing with one another about whether the deepest parts of space still hold any interest, and it's not totally dissimilar to a child whining about how a dad wants to go hiking when they just want to go to Disney World. It's much easier to grasp, and at once helps blend old and new. Our protagonist, who is the captain, is being paid by the family to travel through space when he decides that he's had enough and remind them that the intercom is all two-way. This all took me a good hot minute to understand what the fuck was going on, but I think I've got the situation now. At the end of the tour, protagonist is attacked by pirates. He quickly goes into action to fool them into thinking that he crashed, and we see that the protagonist comes far more alive during moments of action, finding the average moments of life-to-life boring and not all engaging. It's not a horrible premise, if a tad cliche by this point, but hey, there's nothing wrong with a familiar concept if you put your own spin on it, and doing it in a sci-fi setting is a bit of a switch-up. Then it turns out that the protagonist is actually something akin to friends with the pirates. It's not a co-ed scam entirely, but it is a bit interesting. But he's having a nice long phone call with said pirates when a wrench is thrown into because he accidentally leaves the speaker system on through the call because the speaker system likes to stay on, which was established earlier. It's good. So after protagonist gets blacklisted, there's a fourth wall break to explain that the planet has a ban on swearing, and mathematical terms have replaced swearing in the traditional sense. I actually like this because if there were a ban on swearing, new words would just become swears, and that's good. But I've never been super keen on fourth wall breaks, and I still have no clue what our protagonist's name is, and I'm getting sick of typing out the word protagonist. So, not so good there. I'm trying to approach this objectively. So one thing that comes up is how one particular pilot took a bunch of captain stories from the golden age of space exploration and did a straight up Gilderoy Lockhart, and the protagonist is pissed off. Understandably. Anyway, desperate, protagonist gets a gig pretending to be another pilot on a function who flaked on the show. Turns out, he agreed to be Jack McCune, who is the Gilderoy Lockhart for a crime boss's son that wants to meet the famous star pilot. So boss does the mafia thing and threatens him, and later, when protagonist swipes his ID chip to get some coffee, he now shows up as Jack McCune, which means he appears to have Lockharted this book's Lockhart, which is pretty interesting. So, it's a bit of a stumble out the gate, but the book does find its leg after a few punches. Protagonist continues getting dragged farther and farther into this insane gig. He has to fly to Earth to pick up the Mafia son's love interest, and Mafia son, Danny, is extremely annoying. It's his character and the whole point of him. I get that. But Yahtzee of all people should not need a reminder that being intentionally annoying is still annoying.
I think this character is specifically designed to be annoying, in which case the developers should be congratulated for doing their job so well, and tactfully reminded that deliberately annoying is still annoying.
Then, halfway through the trip, Warden, the assistant who hired the protagonist, decides that she isn't going to be replaced, and steals the protagonist's pistol and kidnaps Danny and his girlfriend, because kidnapping a Mafia Don's son is always a wonderful fucking idea. Protagonist even points this out, and yet it still happens. And I have no idea why. One thing that sticks out to me at this point is that the tone wibble wobbles all over the fucking place based on the subjects. For example, Mr. Henderson is a mafia boss who is super menacing and threatening. So far, so cliche, but effective. However, he is also willing to allow people to show up to his party in either full black attire or reindeer sweaters. The reindeer sweater thing is brought up repeatedly, and I have no fucking clue why. The son is also somewhat distant, even though he's frequently embraced by the father, and his son might be an idiot. I have no idea how I'm supposed to feel about this guy. He's either a menacing threat, a joking antagonist, or a struggling father, and it doesn't create depth as much as it does a clash of tones, and the book thrives in that. Another example is the crushing reality of the life of a space explorer after everyone is pretty much done space exploring, trying to deal with the monotony of a totally civilized life when you are outdated and unneeded. And then this character replaces all swears with math terms. It just ends up being weird. Sometimes a clash can be used to great effect, but I just don't really feel that it works here. Also, I still don't know our protagonist's name, and now it's driving me a little nuts. So we go further into the novel, and not Jack McCune gets tangled up in an increasingly insane adventure, and there's plenty to like and not like about this. Weirdly, it hits both ends of the spectrum. For example, Warren is an extremely intelligent and observant woman who usually thinks far more critically than the main character, which can get boring, but she's not great in practical situations, and whereas protagonist can more than occasionally be an absolute idiot, which can get tiring, he isn't completely useless. I have to admit that Danny and his would-be girlfriend actually do get to endear themselves to me a bit by the end. However, by and large, they're more affected by the plot more than they are by anything they actually do. For the most part, they're just present and things happen around them rather than to them. Anyhow, things move on and we get attacked by a horde of flesh-eating creatures. Protagonist thinks the phrase, "I grabbed my crowbar and swung it round and round like a baby refusing to be changed." What? Just... what? Why? What baby do you change, and when can I expect a documentary? Anyway, in the end, they manage to pull off a bit of trickery, and the antagonist decide that because his son had such a damn good time being kidnapped and nearly killed, he won't kill protagonist or Warden. A bit cliche, but that's reversed whenever Warden blows his fucking leg off with a gun, and I'm immediately reminded of Wendy from Ozark. Shit is just about calmed down, and now she has to make it worse, but hey, to each their own. Protagonist decides to give up all the money from Jack McKeown's books to the pilots whose stories were stolen, which is actually not a horrible result, and many of them begin building a safe haven pilot city in the depths of space. Then he gets arrested from when he cheated the rich family at the beginning. So, the weird thing is, I honestly have no clue if I can recommend this book or not. Actually, honestly, there's things that are both good and bad, and that's not all of it either. It's so perfectly middling.
It's not bad.
It's not. It tastes like just so painfully average.
I don't dislike it, but I doubt I'd listen to it again or read the sequels, though I do understand why somebody else might. So, keeping that in mind, my personal score is a 5. It is so-so. It is. I can't say that it's trash, but neither does it make me want to jump up and shove more of it in my face. In fact, to use Yahtzee system, this book tops the blandness list. Not because it doesn't try anything interesting, but because it both succeeded and failed. It did feel a bit overlong, but I did finish it, which is more than I've done on some books. Anyhow, let's go ahead and take a look at that bingo card. And much like this book itself, the results are deliciously unsatisfying. Many of the unfilled squares come close, but I just, in good faith, can't quite cross them off. Anyhow, that's all for this time, so if you have something else you want to review, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know. If you want to see what we get into next time, subscribe. Until then, drink plenty of water, tell your parents that you love them, and stroke your mustache at night.